So today I figured we would have our go at painting a dragon fruit. So I picked one up, and it's been in the refrigerator, so it has a little water on it, but that's okay. I always like to have a reference, and sometimes I use online, but if I can get an in-person reference, it's so awesome. So we're just gonna use some cold pressed watercolor paper. This is my grabby pad. It is 100% cotton, cold pressed, and I'll link this below. And then I'm just gonna be using, I'll probably go between the 6.3 and maybe the 2 for a little detail. So first, let's take a look at our dragon fruit. So it is sort of oblong shaped. I don't know what you would call this shape. It's not a circle, it's not a perfect oval, but it has this sort of long shape that tapers on both ends. And then I have one here. This is a yellow one. This one's a little bit more oval, but I really like this one. I like the colors. So I think we're gonna do this one today, but this is just to show you that there's so many variations. And then we have this like lightish, pinkish, magenta with some red and orange and just light green little things that stick out the side. I don't know the technical terms of these, but they're so funky. They're so cool looking. And then the tops have these little circles there that they obviously attach to grow from. And then the bottom has another little knob there. I'm gonna start sketching out with a watercolor pencil. If you don't have one of these, that's fine. I just got this at Michael's. It was like very cheap on sale. You could use a regular pencil, but just do very light lines, or make sure to erase before we start painting, because once that paint is on top of the pencil, it's going to be hard to remove that. Start by sketching out just the shape. At the tip, it's a little nubbin like that. And I'm looking down at it. I'm not going to be looking straight at the side right now, but if we were, it would be this sort of same shape, just a different direction, obviously. But so we're gonna go like this. This is a little fatter in the middle. It's almost like a very long lemon. Like that. And then we've got this going in here. And this is gonna be, remember, it's like a circle because it has this opening in here. So it's gonna go up like that, and you might be able to see like the inside of the circle, you might not, depending on how you're looking at it. Okay, now I'm getting like organ. It looks like some sort of organ, like a heart. Not a heart, but you know, like the valves. And then we've got these little shapes here, so we could just sort of sketch out, and they don't have to be exactly how you see them. So these seem like they're on the same line. So we'll do something like that. And then this one maybe we'll fold up like that. Same here. And then we'll do one over here. This is green, so maybe I do have a green here, so I'm just gonna switch a little here because I'm fine with it blending into the red, but just so we can sort of decipher. So it has these nice little leaves here that come off. I guess they're called leaves, I don't know. These would go in, so this is as if you're looking into the leaf. And that one's gonna just turn in and maybe hide behind there. And twist a little. Yeah. This one's kind of folded over, so it would go like that. Go down like that. And then the same on this side. And these look a little bit like tapered here. This is just to sketch it out and get it so you don't go straight onto the paper. I mean, you can definitely do that. That's not a problem. Do whatever makes you comfortable. But some people like to sketch, and I typically don't usually sketch out too much, so I'm starting to implement it a little bit more in my studies. I need to add another one here. This isn't exactly correct, but I am looking at it on an angle, imagining it from above. So let's just put another one right here, just for fun. All right, and now we have that sort of sketched out. I'm gonna go into my watercolor and I'm gonna try to make this color here. So I think it's like a pinkish, I'm gonna use this nice pretty pink in my palette. This is my Mungyo watercolor palette. I will link everything below, but I love this palette. So I'm gonna mix some pink with a little bit of red, and I should have activated these. I didn't activate them, but just gonna start with a lighter wash. And you see how this is yellow over here. So I'm just gonna do a very light wash. It's mostly redder over in here. And it seems to taper out to get a little bit yellowy green at the edge. So I'm just gonna do my first layer here. Oops. Maybe drop in a little bit more color there. And then I'm gonna actually pull this down a little. And I'm gonna go into a lighter green shade. It's hard to see on my page. Here's a nice green that I have. And I'm just gonna drop that in. And this is a way to get like very fun bleeds. So this is a little bit more loose. Same thing over here. Now I'm gonna see how that watercolor pencil is sort of blending in. So it's nice to sort of do sketches with it. I need to get a better range of colors because this one doesn't really match, but that's okay. And then I'm just gonna drop some bleeds in there. Just look how pretty that is. I like to work in sections. You don't have to do it that way. Over here, we have a little bit more yellow in there. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of a warm yellow and sort of drop that in while it's still wet. And pull out some yellow in here. And we're working wet into wet right now. So if you're unfamiliar with that, that just means we are working wet paint into wet on the surface, so wet water. And then quickly I'm going to find a green for just the tips. See how they're slightly darker? Just gonna add that, and it's gonna bleed out a little bit and create very pretty variations. Looks so nice, love those. This is a green here. Very light yellow at the tip here. Now you see how I kind of worked all together with those colors? That is how I like to work, but if this is too much for you, put down a base layer first. Watercolor is really working in layers, but I like to get that first layer to have a bunch of these very organic bleeds, and then I like to build on top of that. So I'm just sort of blending while it's still wet what I can in this area. You can wait, but you see how this is lifted up? It's almost like a triangle here. I want to drop that in now just to create that shadow. And that could even be a little brighter. And you can do that once that layer is dry. I'm mixing a little bit of red with this bright pink just to create that sort of, it looks like it's lifting up. Ridges, is that a good word for it? Ridges. And then there's these little lines here. A little darker pink. And then a little bit more yellow over here. Less yellow than that, I think. So let's go over here and start layering the pink down. So we're gonna just go under here. It's gonna be a little bit darker. So I'm just gonna use a darker value of this pink in here. Putting down these layers first in these spots where I wanna make it precise. And then just pulling that out so it's a little bit lighter. Add a little bit more water if you need, because we just want to do a light layer. Under here is going to be a darker. And we do want to work a little quickly because once it dries, you might have that harsh line. One in there. A little bit more there. And then I'm just trying to leave where I know the green will be, because I don't mind them to blend, but I don't want them to be mucky. So this will be all pink here. I mean, I think this is correct. I think I might have lost something in here, but that's okay. Pull that out. It's just going to be on top of that pink there. And since we did work with a very light layer of pink, it's working out fine for us because it does a nice bleed in there. Go back in here, add some green. This first layer, now this is already basically dried, but I just want this first layer to be where I want it before it dries. So I'm just sort of wiggling and lifting to get that variation right in here, like in these, how these leaves are. And then maybe if you want this to be a little bit more vibrant, we can just pop in some pink there. And you see how that bleeds. And then once that's dry, we'll be able to see what we need to do there. Do a little bit of this darker purple shade. Darker magenta, I should say. And just pull out a little shadow there. And this is really just so I could sort of mark my drawing also. I like to add in what I can so that while I'm painting, I know what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes I sort of lose myself, so. Just tapping it in there so that it will create these pretty, pretty bleeds. Down here. Pull some of this up. I'm gonna put in some pink right in here. See what happens over there. So pretty. I want to use a little bit of a darker green down here on this base here. So I'm just going to put in some darker green. Work with my light green in there as well. And drop it in that pink color just so it mixes. I want the tones to mix together. So whatever they create, like whatever bleeds they create together, that's what I want, if that makes sense. So this greenish color mixed with that pink is giving this almost like yellowy color, which we see right in here, so it's perfect. And then same on this side. Well, that's a little bit too, actually it's okay. I'll go into a little bit of yellow out here. See a little bit of, I don't know if you can see that there, but this is a little bit more yellow. And what I'm going to do is drop in some of that green at the tip there. I'm going to mix a little bit of this yellow in there. Over here we've got some green in there. Fill that in. Very light green. Same right here. And then in here we've got some shadow. So again, bleeding those colors together so it's very organic. And then while that is still a little wet, I'm just going to lift up with a dry blotted brush. Fun little, what are they, leaves, petals? I don't know. This is gonna be, it's blending a little with that watercolor pencil, that's fine. So this is light, and then we'll do a little bit on the outside, a little bit darker green to show that this is the middle. See how that kind of made it look like it's bent over a little? But again, first layer. Same here. This is going to be sort of open underneath. And we'll figure that out once we get. And then on the inside here, I see like this is green, like very light green, and then there's almost like touch of like this pink color sort of bleeding in to that petal. Really pretty variation in there. That dry, and now once that's drying, we will go in and just create another darker layer in some of those spots that we see. So I'm mixing this bright pink with the magenta color here. And I'm just gonna go in and start pulling out where we've already sort of made those highlights, but this is gonna be a little bit darker now that it's dry. I'm just gonna pull out over here and then maybe a little ridge sticking up. Just gonna start glazing over this to create some, trying to control the water. We don't need too much water. Lift this up a little. Touch that edge slightly to pull it out. Same thing over here. So this is going down like that. This one's gonna go up like this. And I'm just using it as a reference. It's not exact, especially at the angle that I'm at, but I'm trying here to just use it as a reference. This is sort of lifting, and then it seems like this is a little darker right in here. And you kind of want it to, yeah, to create those sort of ridge looks. Pull this line. This one has a little bit of a line. A little dark under here. Just want to sort of blend this out a little. Very lightly blend that edge while it's still a little damp. And you can see we're really starting to build up those layers. This area over here is a little bit funky, so I'm gonna go right over that with some pink, that pink mixture. I'm really gonna pull that out here. And here I'm gonna pull some darker shades underneath this flap. Create some texture if you want. You can start adding little dots. There's some slight dots in there. It's hard to see, but there are some slight dots. And those could be yellowish too. You don't have to do that at this point, but you can start mixing that in whenever you feel like you'd like to. A bit of a darker purple over here. It seems a little bit darker. A little more red to this because it's not purple. It's like a reddish color, reddish pink. Okay, so this is sort of lighter over here. So I'm just gonna do very slight glazing with what I have on my brush. I'm actually gonna drop in a tiny bit of yellow because it's a warm yellow because I really want some variation in that skin. Go darker under these. And I'm working sort of wet into damp at this point. So that's why I sort of bounce around. Because as sections dry, you want to just make sure you have them where you're at. Because with watercolor, you really can't change it too much after it's dry without getting some funky like bleed lines, which if you're fine with that, that's cool. But I'm gonna go back in here and pull out some shadow. Sort of pulling out that idea of I don't know what it's called. I don't know what this thing is called. Just where it attaches to wherever it grows from. Not good with technical terms if you haven't noticed in any of my other videos. Okay, so here we go. So here, this one's sort of folded over, so I'm going to just pull a line out like this. And it's going to give you that look that it's folded. Same here. And this is where you might want to take a smaller brush for any sort of details. I'm just actually mix some brown, like this burnt umber with the green to really make it stay in the same range but darken it up. Got one of these over here. Over here I'm just gonna put I'm going to do the dark green at the tips of these leaves here. You see more pink and yellow right in here. Little shadow. Some color, some lines in there. Yes, right here we have another. Pull that out so it's very obvious. All right, so we'll let this dry and then it could be finished, or you can just go on and to the next part. My camera ran out of battery and I didn't realize, but all I did in that little time was added in this dark green color here. It's like a dark brownish green, which is right over here. So I've got this dark brown, and then I'm just mixing in a tiny bit of that green that we've been using. It's like a dark sap green with brown undertones. And then I'm just gonna go into the tips of these and just bring out some shadows on there. And you don't have to do this part, but this is kind of how we sort of make it look a little bit more realistic, and it adds some contrast. Just adding little bits where I see them. I'm just gonna sharpen that tip of that here. And we'll do a little here. I'm just gonna go around and do that wherever I feel like adding in any kind of colors, any kind of shadows. This one will be a little fun. And then I'm just gonna pull out this sort of shape over here while I have this. Again, I'm just using as a reference. It doesn't need to be exact. You can totally do this as a still life, which I kind of am, but where else should I add some? Maybe a little bit over here. Pull a little bit of contrast in there. You see how that's kind of lifting it a bit, making it appear a little bit more 3D. So I'm going to drop a little bit more green in there. Define this one. And I'm using a very concentrated watercolor ratio. So I'm using a touch of paint with my paint. So it's very like almost butter, pretty opaque. So you can really get in those details there. I'll just pull those edges to blend them. Add a little bit of green in there. I'm going to add a touch of yellow to this one. I'm going to go back into some of these darker pinks mixed with this magenta purpley color over here. I'm just going to go in and create some very those little lines to make them stand out a little bit more. And I think right here we got a little confused. I'm gonna keep it, but you can see that there is a separation there. I'll just keep it for sake of that. This is just kind of practice. We're just gonna add a little bit of darkness in there just to create a little bit of separation. Not gonna go too crazy. Use this brush to blend it. You see, this is a lot of blending of the colors. And maybe a little bit over here too. I'll define this area right here to make it look lifted. See how that one line sort of makes that look completely lifted up? And then this line here. I don't know if you could see that well. Then we've got this line here. And a little bit under here. Do that here again. And if you want this line a little blended out, you can work a little quickly and sort of blend out that line and pull it up. I would have done that pretty much immediately after if I really wanted to blend that out, but I don't really. I like how it looks. I do want to add in those shadows because that is really where you see such a difference from a piece looking realistic to kind of from it looking flat or more like playful. Okay. I think we're good here. We don't need to go too crazy. You can keep working, really get detailed if you want, but I want to, this is bothering me a little, that brown color. So I want to lastly just drop in a few little spots of yellow. I'm just going to do tiny little dots of yellow here. Just to give a little texture. And then as I do that, I'm also going to go into this red. I'll mix a little pink with that, but I want it mostly red. And see how I'm working very tightly right now. And I just want to also put a little bit of texture there. Very light. Just give the sort of idea of texture. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic. You can totally skip this part. But it's definitely throughout the dragon fruit. Lift this up a bit here. Okay. So now, let me see. Okay. If you want to put, if you want, you could put little lines within your, they don't have too much detail in them as far as the leaves go, as far as whatever these are called go. But you can see that variation of red into yellow into green into this darker green. See all that variation in there. It's so beautiful. And then you can kind of see those little spots that I was talking about. I used a little yellow, but you can definitely go over at the end with some gouache and fill out some tiny, or you can just totally skip that step. But yeah, I think we're good with this. I think we should cut it in half and do the inside now. Okay, so what we have here is we have, you can still see some of the leaves from the side, but you're gonna have this beautiful dark pink magenta outline for your shape. And on the inside we have, it's a white base, the white flash with these little black seeds. And as you can see, there's some seeds at the surface and some on the inside. So we can do like layers of seeds almost, but this is just so fun. And there's definitely a shine on there. So let's see if we can paint the inside of a dragon fruit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to paint this outline in that very bright pink. I'm gonna use a smaller brush. This is a 3. I'll use the 3 for this because it is a little thicker. So what we'll do is we will create this overall shape. And then we're gonna work quickly to bleed these in with the green. So it's not a perfect, whatever this is. What is the shape called? It's oblong, I don't know the shape. But so this is darker at the bottom here. There's more space at the bottom here than on top. Definitely sketch that out with your pencil if you want. I'm just gonna go right in and just paint out the shape. So this is going to be out like that, and then it's gonna come in, and then the bottom has this sort of shape like this. We're gonna go back in, and then you see how these are separate, so there's space in here. So let's do that a little thicker over here. And yeah, we're gonna work a little quick. I mean, this is a wet into dry. You can definitely do something like this wet into wet if you wanted to create a little bit more of a loose, flowy piece. But yeah, so see how we have this? This is gonna come in. These are pretty straight there. I'm gonna blot my, actually I'm gonna use a larger one. I'm gonna rinse my brush, blot it, pick up some water, make sure it's damp. And I'm gonna just touch those edges just so they bleed out a little, so that it's creating a very nice bleed there. I think it blends into the flesh almost. Just touch it ever so gently. You can always go over this and make it darker. The hard part is to make it lighter. So we're good if we do it like this. I'm gonna pull this shape a little bit in, because it is larger over here. Yes. Okay. Just touching it ever so gently, just to get it to blend a little. And then over here, see how it has some lightness and darkness in here? You can lift that up with your brush while it's still wet to create some variation in there and pull some highlights. If you want, you can go in, see these little spots here, just drop in some pigment and let it bleed. Let those blends create themselves. Over here is a little darker. Oops. Got some shaky coffee hands, so could not be a surgeon. Do something like this. Just dropping in different values in here. Really nice. Just adds interest to the overall piece. And then yeah, these do stick out a little. So while this is still wet, I'm going to go back into that green color. And I'm just gonna start showing hints of the skin, because you can't really see it, but you can see it in some spots. I'm just gonna pull that out a little, right here. And then it's gonna blend together just like the skin over here blends. This is come stick out a little bit here. And then I'll do a little bit of more of a limey green We'll see how this one looks. That's good. And I'll pull out the tag here. Now I'm calling it a tag. I don't know what it's called. Just give it a little bit more vibrancy. Got some yellow up here. Some greeny yellow up here. And I'm just switching between different colors and working so they will bleed together. And then as it's still wet, we have this sort of brown color here, which we didn't really address in this. We could use a yellow ochre, or it mixed with a sort of brown, darker ochre here. And we'll just put that shape in. Something like that. Blot that, and then just sort of pull. Add more water so it's a little bit less dark. And this will be just a layer. Sort of goes into this shape here. This is the base layer, so we'll be able to put shadows into this after. So we just want to get that down, so we mark that spot off. And then from there, now that I have that mapped out, I'll go back into this green, this fun green color right here. And we'll just pull out a little bit of that. It was fun, and I'll add some. Maybe just for fun, we'll add one over here. Coming from the back a little. From the side there, and then it's behind this piece here. I'm gonna drop in some yellow. The center. This is like a very bright, cool yellow. And then I'm gonna mix a little bit of this green and do just on the outline right like that. Again, so we're creating these really pretty blends, and they're very organic. Maybe we'll put a little of that over here while it's still damp. Working with damp is really my favorite. It's so much fun. Can really have a little bit more control. I'm gonna add a little darkness in there while it's still wet. And if you even want, you can add a little bit of, say you wanna put a little pink in here and let that blend out. It's so pretty. And then we're gonna do the same thing. I don't really see much on this side, but I'm just gonna do just a little hint, slight hint, right? Maybe we'll add some in just because, for the sake of it. We'll do a little knob here, a little knob, flap. I don't know what to call it. Here, I'll put some here. This is easy here. Pretty. Okay. You can always rework the areas that are now dry. So this area over here could use a little defining. Blend that out while it's still wet. See how that's blending? Go back in if you wanna, and if you wanna glaze some spots. Still slightly damp, so this is something we can do after. For the inside flesh, it's white. So you can work with the paper, you could just use the paper, but I'm not gonna do that. So you could do a very watered down gray to create a white. You use a lot of water, and typically I would like switch this out to a clean water. So let's do the Payne's gray, just a dot, watch, a little dot like that. And then if you want, you can use white. My white is a little tainted with some yellow here. White isn't typically used in watercolor. We usually work with the paper to pull highlights, but if you want, you can add white to that. See, mine's a little yellowy, so I'm not gonna do that. But all you have to do is water that Payne's gray down as much as you can. So it's very light wash. And I'm just gonna put down that layer. Just like that. You could use a larger brush for this if you have. And it's fine if you get some of that pink in there, because it actually, you can, if you can see, I don't know if you could tell on camera, it does have a very light pink ring, and it actually looks really pretty. So the key, I'm going to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to go into that Payne's gray, mix it with a little bit of orange, and that's going to give you more of a not so flat black. So here, let's do a very watered down version of that mixture, and we're just going to start dropping it in. So this is going to be those seeds that are sort of hidden in the multiple layers, and you just put it anywhere, because this is just going to be the first layer. And then we will go on top and we will put in those darker black seeds for the foreground. I'm just gonna, well, I guess I'm using whatever's in my palette, but you feel free to use whatever you're comfortable with. If you use a black, that is absolutely fine. Just make sure it's not like too dark. You gotta water it down for this stuff. And the undertones on this are cooler, so I could have just gone with that Payne's gray. And we're just gonna let that dry completely in the center before we go in and create more layers. So let's go in and maybe do some detail over here. I see we can use a little bit of a brown, like a burnt umber, or even the green that we were using before, the dark green brown. And I'm just gonna sort of pull that out. You see how it's bleeding a little bit too much? That wasn't meant to happen. But if that happens, you can go in and pick that up. I want to work on this dry layer here, so I will just pull out that shape. I'm using a line to do this, and then I'm just going to blend that line to create some shadow. Same here, I'm just gonna pull this shape forward, connect these. Of like a yellow at the base here, this yellowy green. And this is like shaped like little triangle shapes. So I should have noticed, I didn't notice that truly. We could do that, or you could leave it how it was. I'm just waiting for that center to dry, so I'm just gonna add in, feel free to leave it. So I'm gonna go in, we'll use some Payne's gray for the dark, and I'll mix a little black just to make it easier. And then I'm just gonna go in and I'm just gonna stipple in wherever I want. It doesn't look like they have too much of a pattern. They look like they're all over the place. Like strawberries have sort of a pattern. These don't. So we're just gonna stipple them wherever we want, going all different ways. They have a sort of teardrop shape, if that makes sense. Let's see if I could zoom in. So they're like, sort of like a teardrop shape, but we don't have to do exact shapes. You can see that there's layers underneath, and that I think is super cool. But yeah, I'm just gonna do that on the entire dragon fruit, and this might take a while. And I mean, if you don't want to do all the seeds, like you see there's some gaps where they're not on the surface, you can go in and do a lighter wash to make those also look like they're under another, you know, a not as deep layer as those in the background. See how that's creating it even lighter wash? You can do so many multiple layers. Pick those up so they sort of look like they're almost at the surface. And then when you really put that black next to it, you can see how those appear like they're on the lower level.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go around and do this and then we'll be right back. And now I've got all these in. I'm just gonna sort of see what I missed here. So I wanna make this a little thicker. Just do any sort of final touches that you think you missed. Now that this is dry, I'm definitely gonna pull out that shape right here. And then it seems like it's right in here too. And now that's black, but I could definitely go over that. So I'm gonna use an acrylic gouache. You can use a regular gouache. This is just what I have right over here. And I'm gonna I'm gonna use this very small one. This is the Heritage Round number 2 brush. And I'm just gonna start adding in some little details. So this is good if you want to use this to create that shine that's in there. I want this to be pretty opaque. So let's look at this shine in here. So we can just add these little white, do a little bit more opaque. These little white spots. And they're not going to be super noticeable, but they will lift a little bit of that gray up to really pull out some of that shine. This brown spot, we can fix this area if we want, if it bothers you, and sort of pull back that white in. Could do a little bit of highlights in here. You can pull out maybe some of these like very subtle lines that you see in the fruit itself. Well, these are just options for you. If you want to pull out some lines in here, you can see there's just some slight little lines in there. I don't know what they're called, but some of them are they're just shiny. It's just a shine, and then some are just part of the rind. Same goes for the dragon fruit. If you wanted, instead of these little dots here, or with the little dots, you can create these little tiny dots to create some, oops, you could use a very thin brush for this, for these little points. This is a great way to create shine as well. It's hard to see where the shine was when we first started, but this will bring out some highlights in certain spots. Like say you want to put a highlight here or in the skin over here. It's a great way to just lighten up some spots that you either messed up on or you just want to enhance. Like I'll put a little bit of shine right here, maybe some shine there. Depends on where the light is hitting the subject. And you can put in as many details as you want. You can leave this as is, or you can add some shadow underneath. If you want it to be sitting on a table, you can use that mixture of the orange with the ultramarine blue. It's equal parts. Let's use this one. And it's going to create this very natural shadow. Just building that actual color takes a little bit of practice. And then I'm just going to water this down a lot, because again, you can build shadows as well. So let's go under that and just put in a shadow. And again, depends on where the light is. I'm just going to drop in a simple shadow right here, not thinking too much about it. Pull that, just so it sort of looks more 3D. And as you pull out away, it'll get lighter. The shadow will disperse. Oops, got some hair. So let's say we're looking at it. Slight shadow here, and then maybe we'll do, which one am I using here? I'll just do this here. A little bit darker over here. See, this shadow goes here. And then this is lighter. That's going to give you a little bit more realistic looking finished piece. So yeah, I want to use that mixture, but at the same time it's mixing up with my other. So we'll just use this, just a little bit of a gray tone. See how that closer it appears to the subject.
I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, I would love it, love it, love it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me get my stuff out there, and I will see you next time.